This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Morning, Kiran.
Can you all see my screen?
Morning.
Yes, Kiran.
Okay, thank you. Just give me a second. Things. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session on your weekend. So let's get started with our demo today. So as you all might already know, this is DevOps with Azure course. So welcome, everyone. My name is Kiran. And let's talk a bit about myself and then we'll move on to other parts. So about me, I have about 10 years of experience in DevOps and site reliability engineering. Uh, yeah, if you don't know what SRE or site reliability engineering is, don't worry, we'll talk about that. But yeah, it's mostly close to a DevOps role. Okay, I am passionate about technology and teaching. Personally, I like movies, you know, sometimes I read books occasionally. Um and particularly coming to the areas of interest from the technical perspective, um, I am focused on container orchestration, on cloud automation, and also Linux. Okay, so I am a certified Kubernetes administrator. So you might have heard about Kubernetes, and I also am certified Azure administrator. So that's about me in a nutshell. Okay, and before we proceed to our demo, I would like to set some ground rules. So if you have any questions, you can stop me, but maybe not in bit. between my sentences. Okay, let me complete my sentence and then you can ask. Okay, and unmute only when you're asking the question. Of course, you all know that, but just stating it again. Okay, and if there is something that can be covered at the end of the session, I'll definitely let you all know that that will come as part of our demo, so you don't have to worry about it. Um, yes, so that's about it. So before we proceed, any questions? All right, then let's proceed. So getting straight into the actual point, what is this course about, right? What are we going to learn in this course? So that's what we're going to see now. So I understand IT architecture and SDLC. SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. Okay, or it's I mean you could call it as Systems Development Lifecycle as well. But what it means is what are the various stages in developing software? What is the build phase, learn phase? Build phase, plan phase. Okay, and test and maintain, all these phases. Okay, learn key Azure services. So here it's a DevOps course where we are focusing on learning this on Azure platform. So we'll understand Azure services, gain in-depth understanding of DevOps as a practice. So we'll understand what DevOps and why do we need DevOps, and hands-on with DevOps tool set on Azure infra. So we'll learn a lot of infrastructure DevOps tool sets on using Azure as our infrastructure. So Azure infrastructure or Azure cloud is going to be our lab as well as we are going to learn Azure. Okay, so you will have proficiency, or I would say you will start learning Azure, and also you're learning DevOps tools in the same during the same time. Okay, so of course, whatever you have to implement your DevOps, you'll do it on your Azure subscription. Um, and we'll focus on a lot of automation. How do we automate software installation? How do we automate infrastructure creation? All these things we will do in this course. All right, moving on. So this course is about Azure with DevOps, or DevOps with Azure, however you want to read it. So first we need to understand what's cloud, right? So has any one of you heard this? I'm sure you might have heard about it, but when you hear about the term cloud in terms of computing, what comes to your mind?
Storage.
Okay, anything else?
It is a data center.
Data center, okay.
It's basically a data center. We can access the data from it, and we can browse the data from it, and we also browse from anywhere from the world.
Okay, any other answers?
Cost effective
fast,
based on service pay
fast
and use.
connection and data security. Connectivity and data security.
Okay, you mean cloud offers you connectivity and data security? Is
Yeah.
that right? Okay. All right. Any other answers?
Cost effective mainly
Cost
and
effective. Okay.
pay for use.
Okay. Any other answers? Okay, you're all right. Okay. You have talked about various aspects of cloud, which is good. All of you are right. Okay. So let's see from a well-defined standpoint what cloud is. Cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computing resources. So look at the word on-demand availability. Okay, some of you have already touched upon that point, but I'll again elaborate in a minute. Okay, cloud is, again, someone has rightly said, it's nothing but it's a collection of data centers, not a single data center. It's multiple data centers, but what's the difference between a traditional IT infrastructure data center and this is, for example, if you're a large organization or a small organization, doesn't matter. If you have your own data center, you manage your own servers. That's your on-premise environment, or what we call it as private data center. But in this case, it's a collection of data centers that is managed by a cloud provider. A cloud provider could be something like Microsoft for Azure or Amazon for Amazon Web Services. Okay. Um, so at the ground level, it is nothing but a collection of data centers. Users can rent resources on a pay-as-you-use model without the upfront cost. Again, one of you has already highlighted that one, that uh, cloud is all about pay as you go, in the sense you'll pay for only what you are using. You'll not pay anything extra, right? If you're using 100 GB of storage, for instance, you'll pay only for 100 GB of storage. If you're using four virtual machines, each of them with 2 CPUs and 2 GB of RAM, so 4 into 2 CPUs into 2 GB of RAM, that will only, you'll pay for that much. Okay, let's say you're paying only for 10 days, using only for 10 days, you'll pay only for 10 days. And most importantly, there are no upfront cost. What does that mean? Upfront cost means
Maybe future licensing.
Sorry,
Future licensing.
not really. Upfront cost meaning something you have to invest initially. Okay, so when you're starting something, if you have to pay something, that is your upfront cost. You're paying it upfront itself. Okay, so when you start using cloud, you don't have to pay anything. Okay, so we'll come to each of these points, particularly on-demand availability, and what is this pay-as-you-use model as well. All right, moving on. Okay, before we move there, let's elaborate on some of these points. Okay, so what is on-demand availability of computing resources? Let me give you an example. Okay, before let's say 2012, I think, or around 2010 or before 2010. Okay, if you have to book a cab in a city like Hyderabad, okay, what do you have to do? Let's say you have to go to airport tomorrow. If you have to go to airport today, forget about it. You cannot book a cab. You have to go to the taxi stand, or you know or go to the auto stand. Okay, auto parking place, whatever it is. But again, there were some service providers like Z cabs and dot cabs. I think they're still in business, but yeah, not as much as not as popular as they were there. So you have to book at least one day in advance. Call them and say, tomorrow 10 o'clock I have a flight, I need a cab at 8 o'clock, can you arrange? Okay, and they'll look into their Excel sheet or whatever it is, and they'll say, oh no, there are no cabs, but you can get one at 7:30 or 7 o'clock. So again, you call another service provider, and he'll says, let me see. Oh, no cabs tomorrow. Sorry, we can give you at 1 at 6 o'clock if you want. You can go early. So some of things like this, right? But today, or after 2011, 2012 time, you can directly log into a application like Ola or Uber, and start booking cabs. Like just a few minutes before you want to go to a place, you can open your app and click on some buttons without talking to anyone, without asking whether the cabs are available or not. So this is the case with on-demand availability. This is also the same thing that applies to cloud computing. You don't have to talk to someone. You don't have to send money in advance or anything like that. You can just log into a website like Azure portal or AWS console and start creating your resources. When I say resources, it could be a virtual machine, it could be storage, okay, it could be any app service directly, and you can start using it immediately within a matter of a few minutes. Okay, that's what I mean by on-demand availability. Okay, make sense?
Yes.
And users can rent resources on a pay-as-you-use model without the upfront cost. Again, this one. So let's say you have a nice application, you want to start experimenting, or you initially did a POC, proof of concept. You showed it to your friends really liked it, and they say, okay, you should open it for public. We will forward this to various users, and they will see it. Yeah, just publish this one. Okay, then you kind of want to put it on a server, because you cannot run it from your own laptop. You need a server which runs 24/7, 365 days. Okay, so initially you started with, let's say, uh, capacity of 2 servers, and each of them running like 4 CPU and 8 GB of RAM. Okay, so you started using it for 10 days. Then you thought, the interest has grown, so you see that your CPU is always running high, your memory is always utilized high, so more users are coming, so you want to make it faster for them. So from 2 servers you increase it to 4 servers for the next 15 days. Okay, and afterwards the traffic has come down a little slower. Your 4 servers are not completely utilized. The CPU utilization on each of these machines is around 45%. So you thought 3 servers might be an overkill, and you'll only come down to 3 servers with this capacity. Let's say each of these, so the pricing will be like, for 1 hour, 1 server of this capacity will cost you, let's say, $2. Okay, so in this case, 2 into $2 into 10 into 24, that will be your billing. Okay, then sorry, this is for 10 days, right? So 10 into 24. Afterwards, your billing will change. 4 into $2 into 15 into 24, because per hour billing, right? um, and this one will be, let's say, for next 30 days, or we'll calculate only for the first month. Okay, for 5 days your billing will be 3 into $2 into 5 days into 24 hours. So this is what we call as pay as you go. Again, going back to the Ola and Uber example, right? Earlier, when you have to book a cab, he will quote a number. So you have to pay so much for your cab. Then you have to pay it. There's no other option. Now you have Ola and Uber. They will say that, okay, your cost is so much. Okay, that's fixed. Sorry. Now coming to Ola and Uber, your cost is not fixed. Okay, if you're traveling for 10 kilometers, they'll say per kilometer we are charging 7 rupees. So 10 into 7, 70 rupees, plus per minute you will be charged like 2 rupees. So 10 into 2, 20 rupees for that, plus GST. Everything is given clearly in that bill, right? So that's what pay as you go means. You'll pay only for the amount of time you use and the kind of resources you're using. Again, Ola and Uber example. If you're booking a hatchback, it will be one price. If you're booking let's say a sedan, it will be one price. If you're booking an SUV, it will be one price. So is the case here. If you're booking a smaller virtual machine, it will be lesser price. If you're booking a bigger virtual machine, when I say bigger virtual machine, more size, more CPU, more RAM, then you'll pay more for it. Okay, that's what we mean by pay as you go. And there is no upfront cost. Again, take the previous example where you have developed a great application, you want to show it, you want to make it publicly available, but you don't have any money. Welcome to the world of cloud. You don't need to have any money. You can just log into the portal and start creating your resources. And with the revenue you earn at the end of the month, you can pay bill. And there's another thing also with the cloud, rapid elasticity. In the sense, like I told you in the previous example, your website is doing well. So from 4 servers, you want to go to 40 servers. Okay. Then in the old days, when you are maintaining your own servers, you have to call up some manufacturer like HP or Dell and ask them, okay, I need 10 servers for the next 15 days. Or rather, you cannot ask for next 15 days. You have to buy them for life. Okay, you have to buy them and have storage space in your data center. You have to have additional power, additional cooling, all these things, right? So when you run a data center, you need to have multiple network connections. One network connection is not enough, because if that goes down, your entire application will be down. So you cannot just rely on one ISP provider like AT&T or Verizon. You should have both of them, or even more. In Indian context, it could be Airtel and Tata and BSNL. Okay, you should have more than one network connection. So is the case with power. You cannot just rely on your public power supply. You have to have a backup generators, power supply, and everything. Okay. So all these things are eliminated because these are all maintained by a cloud provider like Microsoft or Amazon. All that you need to do is, log in and start creating your resources. So rapid elasticity is one of the key features in cloud. Okay, so let's move on to Azure and understand what Azure is. Okay, so Azure is Microsoft's cloud offering. Okay, so the name of the cloud service offered by Microsoft is Azure. Obviously, it is one of the leading cloud providers, only behind Amazon's AWS in market share and service offerings. So in terms of the number of services, in terms of the market share in the sense the number of the number of customers using cloud. So Amazon is the leader, obviously, because it was started in 2006 and it definitely had that advantage. Azure started around 2010, but it could not pick up before 2015. Okay, there were a lot of issues with that. So finally it picked up. So now it's the second most leading cloud provider. GCP is also catching up. GCP is Google Cloud Platform. Okay. Azure's infrastructure is spread across the globe in 160 plus physical data centers in multiple regions. So as I told you, cloud is nothing but a collection of data centers, and these data centers are not located in a single location but in various locations. Okay, so Azure has data centers in the US, in the Middle East, in India, in China, everywhere. Okay, Azure's services span various areas. So what are the various services that Azure provides? From simple virtual machines to storage like hard drives, virtual hard drives, okay? Machine learning tools or IoT. IoT stands for Internet of Things, big data and security, and many more. So Azure offers all these services. I mean, these are just some of the examples, but there are a lot more. So this is Azure's actual infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, okay? They have their data centers in all these blue circles. So some of them have a white dot inside them. What it means is they have availability zones. Availability zones is nothing but, let's say if Azure says they have a data center region in Hyderabad region, that means they don't have a single data center usually. When you have an availability zone, what they do is they create two different data centers, but they're separated from a distance. So most of you might know Hyderabad's geography. So what they do is they create one data center in Ramoji Film City, another data center in somewhere like Patancheru. Okay, these are quite far off from each other, right? So what happens, even if there are floods in Ramoji Film City, you have your data center running in Patancheru, so that if one of the data centers is affected within the same region, your other data center is still running. So people who are using resources in that particular region will not be affected. Okay. In fact, there is a data center in South India, which is in Hyderabad again. In fact, AWS is also coming with a data center in Hyderabad, but it doesn't have availability zones. But if you look at Canada Central or East US, they have availability zones, meaning within the same region, they have multiple data centers, which are again connected by Microsoft's network. Okay. So we'll talk about them in our courses, in our course. Okay. Just telling you the example. And this is like 2 months old. Maybe there are some announced regions which might have already come up. For example, hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah, yes, Kiran.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
yes,
thought
we can hear you.
Thanks. All right. So there are some of the regions which are already announced, but meaning they will come up in the future. Okay. So this is Azure's infrastructure. just to give you an idea. Okay, so that's the cloud part. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one question, Kiran.
Mhm.
This is Raghu. So it will. So in case, though we are maintaining multiple data centers and one got down due to some technical or other natural issues, nature
Mhm.
related issues, but other data center will come up and data will be transformed easily, right?
Um,
Is that
that's
is that an automatic mechanism or manually we have to establish connections and do this?
okay. So there are multiple scenarios you're talking about. Okay, there could be one thing. There could be data, purely data related stuff. Okay, then it could be Azure already replicates your data in multiple availability zones based on the type of the service you choose. And when it comes to virtual machines or IaaS, infrastructure as a service, like virtual machines, then it's up to you to configure that setup. Okay, so that's why these DevOps and all these things come into picture. How do you ensure your application is always available even if there is a data center level failure? That's up to you to architect it. That up to us, meaning as a future DevOps engineers, that's up to us to create that kind of architecture in such a way that even if there is a data center wide failure, your application will still be functional for the end users. How do we do it? We learn in the course. There are some services, yes, definitely they will auto failover. Okay, but some services you have to configure as a cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer for them to work. All right.
Yeah, makes sense, Kiran.
All right, moving on. So now the important part of our demo, of course cloud is also important, but DevOps. So let's understand what DevOps actually is. Okay, then we'll spend time on our question, the detailed curriculum details. Okay, so what's DevOps?
Hi Kiran, I had one question, Kiran.
Go on.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
it is
on,
not
please.
related to. Yeah, I had a 10 years of experience in IT industry.
Hmm.
I'm planning to switch to the DevOps, Azure DevOps. Whether this course will be available, this course will be suits to me to migrate from different technology to Azure DevOps. Do I need to learn additional concepts which apart from this training?
Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, later. That will be covered. All right. So please stay around. That will be covered. Okay, what is DevOps? DevOps is a set of software development practices that combine software development and IT operations to shorten the system's development lifecycle while delivering features, fixes, and updates frequently in close alignment with business objectives. Okay, so again, this is a standard Wikipedia definition. What it means is you define a set of rules that ensures better coordination between your IT team or the operations team and the development team. So in IT world, always there are these two parts, right? One is the team. Actually, if you ask me, there are three parts. Uh, there is one team which actually writes your code, then another team which actually tests your code, the QA team, and then there is another team which actually mm, deploys this code into the production servers and also maintain your infrastructure. Okay, so you have dev, QA, and ops. So DevOps is all about bringing these three teams together to enable or to be able to release your software faster to the market. Okay, what does releasing faster to the market means? It means your application should be, let's say you have a plan to launch an application, let's say a banking website. So the amount of time it should take from the time you plan, from the time you release it to the general public should be short. Okay, so that's the main objective of DevOps. And not only that, once you release your application, it should constantly have updates or bug fixes. Like people might notice a lot of issues with your application and they might report to you, or your internal teams might report like, okay, I noticed that there are some errors in your application. Like when I click on this, it is supposed to bring this page, but it is not doing anything at all. Then you work on that fix. But all these fixes also should have been tested properly and implemented quickly. So that's the objective of DevOps. Okay, DevOps objective is all about making your applications release faster, updates faster, bug fixes faster, and of course with good quality. Good quality, meaning with less number of bugs. So DevOps is all about bringing these three teams together. That doesn't mean you have to know development, QA, and operations all together to do that. No, you might have a DevOps team which will work in making sure this objective is achieved. What is the objective? To take your software faster to the market. Okay. Wait a second. Yeah. So before we go to that pillar, just a thought on what DevOps is. Okay, what is DevOps? It's a culture that aims to create better coordination between development, QA, and operations. Okay, so it's again what it's not. It's not a single technology or a tool. It's not like you learn Java or you learn let's say um, MySQL, or it's not like a single application like that. Okay, it's a actually culture. It's a practice. It's a set of tools that you implement. I mean, tools comes later, but more importantly, it's more of a practice culture that you bring into your organization to ensure your dev, QA, and ops team work together to achieve the velocity of deployments or velocity of your applications. Okay, what is the objective? Again, as I said, it's a the aim of adopting DevOps is to build and release software quickly and maintain applications with high availability and resilience. What is resilience? Even if there is a failure, you should be able to recover from it very soon. Okay, what are some of the roles very similar to DevOps? Again, as I told you, site reliability engineer is one of the similar roles, or cloud ops. Okay, cloud ops may be someone who is mostly focused on the infrastructure only, but he might also use some of the DevOps tools or some of these automation tools to get his work done faster. All right. Importantly, it's not a single technology or a single tool or even not a set of tools. It's all about culture. It's all about standardizing your processes. So if you look at DevOps as a as a building, as a structure, you have your infrastructure. So infrastructure is your platform where you install your applications. It could be your private data center, it could be cloud. Okay, this is your main platform, and of course automation forms the main part. So you have infrastructure as code, meaning you have to create multiple instances, multiple virtual machines for your application to run. So then you don't have to create, you shouldn't create manually going to the website and clicking on so and so thing. Instead, you need to maintain some configuration which will create code for you. The advantage with this infrastructure as code is once you have this infrastructure as code templates or the code, you can use it for multiple projects. Maybe you are a service provider for multiple clients, and whenever a new client joins, maybe you'll have to spin up a cluster for them, or maybe you have to create a base infrastructure for them. So every time you should not be able to you shouldn't do that manually. You should have a code which will create that for you. So you have to develop that code as a DevOps engineer. And software configuration, okay, you build your application, that's fine, but how is it running? Sorry Once your infrastructure is created, on top of it you need to install your dependencies. For example, you have a Java application, then in your servers, your Java code will be written by your developers. But as a DevOps engineer, what you need to make sure is for the Java code to run on your virtual machines, you need to have some softwares pre-installed on your machines, on your servers. So all the things you will have to automate, because it will not be one or two machines, it will be 10 or 15 machines or even more. Okay, so you have to have a automated way to create all these dependencies, to make it uh, to harden your systems from the security perspective. When I say security perspective, you should not give the attackers any chance of sending viruses or uh, denying service on your servers. You should have all these settings configured. So if you have to do on tens and tens of systems, you cannot do it manually by logging into every system. Instead, you should have a centralized automated way which we call it as software configuration. Okay, then CI/CD. So this is the core element of DevOps, if you ask me, apart from other tools also. What CI/CD does is, you know, it takes the developers develop the code, and you have to ultimately deploy it onto your production servers. But this deployment part has to be automated. From the time the developer check in the code into some location called as source code repository. So developers write code on their own laptops initially, but that has to be stored in a central location, something like GitHub or GitLab. So when the developers check in their code into GitHub or GitLab, you have to create a process in such a way that that code is taken from there automatically and converted into a deployable format. Okay, deployable format may be something like a .exe or .apk if it's an Android application, and installed on the target servers where users will access that. Okay, so that part is known as CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous deployment. You continuously integrate your code written by various developers, package them into a single installable file. Okay, sometimes you need not package it. So in languages like Python, you don't have to do the packaging, but you have to integrate the code, install any dependencies, and deploy it onto the target servers. Okay, that process is known as CI/CD. That's a kind of a key pillar for your DevOps. And finally, you have monitoring. Okay, so you have created your infrastructure, you have configured all the dependencies, you have also deployed the code, you have set up CI/CD. But how do you ensure your application is always running? And in the world of IT operations, you have to take it for granted that systems will go down at any given point in time for various reasons. Okay, it could be software issue, network issue, hardware issue, you never know, but you should be prepared for failure. Okay, so in that way you have to create a monitoring and alerting system where whenever there is a system failure, first thing you have to make sure that even if there is one component failing, your entire application is not down. Okay, that's the first thing you do. And also, even in that case also, because you cannot allow that system to be in failed state. For example, your application is running a web server, and it is running on two servers. If one of the servers fails, the other server will still be able to serve traffic to your end users. Your end users will not see the failure immediately, but if it is only running on a single server, what if a lot of users are coming and that server also crashes? So that's why you have to set up monitoring and alerting, so that before your customers notice any issues, you have to fix them. Okay, sometimes you cannot help it, there might be a complete outage, you have to fix them. And you write your infrastructure as code in the form of configuration or code, software configuration in terms of playbooks or code. For your source code, the developers write, it has to be stored in a central location. All these things are maintained through source code management. Okay, so these days everything is in the format of code. Okay, there is a concept called as XAC. So XAC. Here X could be anything. What's happening with my keyboard? Okay, meaning it could be IAC, infrastructure as code, or SAC, software configuration as code, or in fact pipeline as code. Your CI/CD can be also declared in the format of pipeline as a code. So there are, everything as a code is the concept these days. You want to have everything in a repeatable format. Okay, earlier everything used to be done manually through UI, graphical user interface. You click and do things. Now the idea is to move towards a repeatable format where you have everything in the format of code. So all these things have to be maintained inside your source code repository. Okay, that's where um, your source code management comes into picture. So you will have to understand what's a source code management, how do you version control this, how do you create various versions of your source code, and all these things comes under your source code management again, which is a very important concept in DevOps. Okay, so you might and all of these are all obviously automation, right? So when we talk about infrastructure, it not only talks about the virtual machines or the storage, hard drives, and all these things, but also the operating system that is running on top of your virtual machines. That should also be considered as your infrastructure, your platform. So you'll have to understand how operating systems work also. Okay, So you might be wondering, there's a lot of tools to learn. Yes, there are a lot of tools to learn, but as a DevOps engineer, you can choose to focus on one or two. Okay, but the base things you cannot ignore. Like you have to be good with Git and GitHub, which are your source code management. You should be good with the one of the cloud providers. If you're good with multiple cloud providers, nothing like it. But at least one cloud provider like Azure or AWS should be good enough. Okay, you might choose either of the, I mean, it's good to have understanding on both these, but you could choose to become an expert in one of these things. But CI/CD again is an important thing. You need to know good fair deal of these things. Okay. Again, monitoring is also uh, monitoring. Sometimes DevOps teams might not do directly. They might set up monitoring, but it might be monitored by other teams, or there might be a dedicated IT team which will do monitoring. So, but yeah, we'll discuss monitoring in our course also. Okay. So moving on.
Kiran,
So now,
hi
yeah,
Kiran, this is
please
Raj. Can I ask a small question?
go on. Go on.
Yeah, so can you give a little example like how things used to happen before and after DevOps, and so that we understand, how DevOps really, help improve it?
Okay. Let's say you are building, so your team decides to, that's a good question actually. So your team decides to, when I say team, your business decides to create a new application. Okay. Let's say you're working for a large banking corporation, and these people decide to create a new application where end users will directly uh, can directly log into this website and invest in shares without actually having to contact brokers. Of course, every banking site offers some kind of these things, right? You what is this unit linked oh, I'm sorry, I'm bad with financial terms. Yeah, whatever, your mutual funds and all these things. So a new application that is more intuitive to the end users, where they can log in and they can create their TAN number or whatever you call it, and you should be able to invest in your shares, mutual funds, securities, whatever you want to do, you should be able to do it through this application. And it should be more like intuitive and all these things. That's the concept. Okay, back in the day, without this DevOps culture, so what would happen is developer team would start developing the code. Maybe they work for some 90 days or 120 days on the code, and let's say the release the application is planned to go, let's say this was planned in the month of March, and the go live was initially planned in, let's say, July, right? And end of July. So developer team works for these 90 20 120 days. All this time the ops team is in complete isolation. Okay, ops team is working on the other things. They are focusing on the existing infrastructure. They don't even know that a new application is being developed. Okay, so the go live date is July. So by end of June, or 10 days after, 10 days into July, ops team will be known, hey, we are launching a new application, so give us 10 servers. Okay, or we need three different environments, three different set of uh, environments. Each environment should have, let's say, um, the dev, because you will not launch applications directly into your production. First they have to go into dev environment, then they have to go into staging or pre-prod, whatever you call it, and then they go into production. So in dev, you might have to have two web servers, two app servers, and let's say 3 DB servers. Okay, so is the case with your staging environment. You need 4 web servers, okay, 2 app servers, and 5 DB servers. Just giving an example. In prod maybe, in prod generally you will have the same thing as your web, your stage, sorry, 2 app and 5 DB servers. Okay, the first thing is here, this dev team is in complete blind spot. One second, please. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so one thing is the ops team is completely in blind side till the date of release, or close to the date of release. But when it comes to when you implement a DevOps culture in your organization, the requirement is that you start you start involving the ops team from the day zero in the sense from the first day of your software development. You will inform your operations team that, hey, listen, we have a new project, which is your this is the application, these are the requirements. Maybe this will be a Java application. We are planning to host it on a website. Sorry, we are planning to host it on Azure. Okay. And maybe initially we'll launch with 2 web servers, 2 app servers, and 3 DB servers. Okay, be prepared with these things, so everyone knows this. So another important challenge is all these 120 days, developers are testing the application in their local machines only. So after 120 days or 95 days, they give the code to ops team and they ask it to deploy into the servers. So there is no CI/CD process before DevOps also. I mean, there was some sort of CI/CD, but not as advanced as it is now. So they will deploy the code into the servers with some automation or manually, whatever, and the code doesn't run on the web servers. And they go back to the dev team, the ops team goes back to the dev team and says, boss, sorry, the application is not running on the dev servers. And the developer team would simply say, works on my machine. So this is a common phrase in IT, works on my machine, meaning it's working for me. So you figure out what's wrong with it. Okay. So then the ops team says, no, we tried it, but it's still not working. So maybe when the developer team developed, they might be developing on MacBooks and they might have one version of Java. Let's say this is a Java application. Okay. Uh, but in the dev servers, maybe it is running a different version of Java. Okay. So the Java version is not compatible with the code they have written. So it's not working. So now then again, they have to fix all the issues. Okay. So they again fix the issues and come back to dev team and they will deploy it again. By this time, your go live date may have been pushed back from July, which was planned for July, might have moved to August 15th already. Okay. So again, they might encounter some errors. Again, they have to go to dev team and all these things because there is no synchronization between these two teams till the last stages. Okay. Then also they are working in silos as in different teams, not together. But the DevOps team says that this project should be considered as one project, not as a dev versus ops or dev plus ops. It should be like one team together working. And also, when they have to create these servers without these tools like the infrastructure as code tool, um, you have to do it all these things you have to do these things manually. You have to go into a console and click on these links and develop these things, so it will take some time. But with infrastructure as code, you can have a template ready, make some modifications to the number of virtual machines or the size of the virtual machines, and you can immediately deploy the entire infrastructure. Okay, because when you're creating it for a new application, maybe you'll have to create a new new network or new virtual network, new subnets, all these things. Okay, so earlier these things used to be happen manually. So again, you have to create these all things manually, and there is a possibility of the manual errors. And also, once they create the servers, they have to do the software configuration. So they'll tell us development team might simply say, okay, we need JDK or JRE running on these servers. So you install some standard version of JRE, but that might not be properly communicated with you which version is required. So all these challenges are addressed in the by adopting DevOps culture. Okay, just to give you a small example. So apart from that, the tooling, right? So when you install 2 web servers here, 4 web servers here, 4 web servers here, there are 10 different web servers, and maybe all of them require the same version of software to run as web servers, like Apache or Nginx. So to manually install on these 10 systems for just one application, and I'm just giving a small number. Sometimes you might have 6 web servers or 10 web servers also. So to manually install Apache on these 10 web servers, to log into each of these machines and do it manually, either you need 10 people to do it parallelly, or one person spending a lot of time on these 10 machines. Okay, of course you could create some custom scripts and all these things, but that will take time. But with software configuration management, with tools like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, these things can be automated. So once you have a playbook, with small changes in your playbook, you can use it for different situations. Okay, so that's the before and after situation, if you ask me. I mean, small example. Majorly, the issue is integrating your code and deploying it into web servers. That used to be a big challenge, and CI/CD finally solved that issue. Not only CI/CD, there are other tools which solved it. We'll talk about them as well. Okay. Again, CI/CD is a process which uses certain set of tools. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Kiran, thanks.
All right. So moving on, you have to see the DevOps or rather SDLC, meaning software development life cycle, in a single picture, and what are the various tools used. So let's see what are the various phases and how DevOps intervenes at each of these stages. Okay. So you have the build phase first. You have to build your infrastructure. I did not talk about the planning stage. Planning stage is also part of it, but more of project management stuff, more of architecture stuff. So I did not include the planning stage. But you have build phase, then you have the configuration phase. You build the servers and you do the configuration into the servers. Then you have the CI, continuous integration. You have to take the code developed by your developers and then integrate into a single piece. Because on a single project, multiple developers work, right? Not a single developer, multiple developers work on a single project. Then the continuous delivery part. You have to continuous deployment or continuous delivery. You have to deploy this code onto your servers. And the next part is, of course, monitoring. You have to monitor your systems once your applications are running. And alerting. Okay, you're monitoring, right? Monitoring is what? To check if a service is working or not, to check if a virtual machine is functional or not. But how do you get notified if something is failing? That's what we call it as alerting. So if you put it in a simple, very condensed manner, these are the various phases within your DevOps lifecycle. Okay. Um, so again, in all these aspects, you have to think of security. That's the next concept people are going at, DevSecOps. Right now, we need not worry about it, but you have to embed security at all these phases. It's like, again, more of a mindset process rather than any tooling. So let's see what are the various tools we have for these things for us to achieve these various steps. For the build one, of course, yeah, before we go to the tool section, what are the other things? Source code management, meaning your source code, the code your developers write, or even the automation scripts or automation code you write, that all should be stored inside a source code tool like GitHub. So that's the source code management. So for the build part, we use Terraform. I'm talking from our course perspective now. Okay, you can use any infrastructure as code tool, but in our course we are going to learn Terraform because that is very widely used, most popular, okay, and easy to use. And from the configuration perspective, we are using Ansible. Again, very popular and easy to set up and easy to run. From the CI/CD perspective, we are going to learn Azure DevOps, which is another service offered by Microsoft. Okay, Azure DevOps itself is the name of a tool, or rather a service. Okay, we'll use that. And when it comes to monitoring and alerting, we'll use Azure Monitor. And when it comes to source code management, we'll use Git and GitHub. So Git is a tool through which you can version control your source code, and GitHub is where you store your code. All right. And then you have your operating system. Okay. So because where does your infrastructure, where does your application run? Where do you do all the software configuration? It has to be done on an operating system. So we are going to learn which operating system is this? That logo?
Linux.
Linux. Okay, we are going to learn Linux in this course because that's the most popular enterprise IT operating system. All right. And yeah, so these are of course, I did not include Docker here. So Docker is again another form of CI/CD tool only. What it does is it makes sure that, again, coming back to the previous problem we discussed when someone has asked me that question, how does it compare before DevOps and after DevOps? So again, when it comes to this question of integrating your code or deploying your code, this problem always comes up. Works on my machine, meaning their machines might have something different, and the target servers might have something different in terms of dependencies or in terms of operating system version. So what containers or Docker does is it packages all these things into a single unit so that when you install this on any server running Docker, they run in a similar way, in a uniform, consistent way. So those are containers. We are going to learn about those things as well. Okay. So this is the entire life cycle, and this is where various tools fit into this one. Of course, we'll also discuss what is the process, what is the design thinking in each of these phases. But yes, these are the tools we are going to learn So if you do not have any questions, I'll proceed to show you the detailed curriculum that we are going to discuss in this course. Shall I proceed?
Yeah, Kiran.
Kiran, one question here. What is the tool that we are going to use under monitoring, alerting?
Azure Monitor. Azure has its default monitoring system known as Azure Monitor. We'll use that for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Not only that, we'll understand about what are various types of monitorings that are generally available or that are generally done. So yeah, based on that, I mean, I'll talk about what is the entire process around monitoring and alerting. So what is incident management? All these things we'll have a session. We'll discuss about various aspects. What happens after an incident comes in? What do you do after the incident is resolved? All these things we'll discuss, not only simply the tool. See, tools might be simple, but you have to understand the entire concept also.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I should have put a logo here saying Azure Monitor, but anyway, because we are on Azure, our resources are on Azure, we are using Azure Monitor. All right. So let's dive deep into, I mean, not dive deep, but let's see the important sections of our curriculum. What are we going to discuss? So as part of our operating system, we are going to learn GNU Linux or Linux operating systems. So as part of that, we learn file system, navigation, editors, package, process. All these things we are going to learn today. I mean, sorry, not today in our course. And about cloud, Azure, of course. The course name itself is DevOps with Azure. So we are going to learn about Azure. So these are again very high level topics: account management, resource group, IAM. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management, virtual networks, VM, storage, DNS, Azure CLI, and all these things. Okay. And coming to scripting, we'll learn about Linux scripting. So how do you write Bash, meaning it's again Linux shell scripting. So what is the structure of a script? What is the structure of a script? What are conditionals, loops, variables, arguments? We'll use all these things. Then finally, not finally. Wait, coffee is not kicking in. So infrastructure as code. As part of infrastructure as code, we're going to learn installation and configuration, creation and deletion and updating of infrastructure on Azure using Terraform. So how do we install Terraform? How do we configure it to communicate with your Azure? And how do you create resources with using Azure? How do you delete? How do you update? All these things we are going to learn with Terraform. Okay. And source code management, we'll learn about Git and GitHub as well. How do you version control your code? How do you store your code in GitHub? How do you pull it from GitHub to your Azure DevOps? All these things we are going to learn. And from the software, sorry, this is repeating again. Software configuration, no, not repeating. Yeah. Software configuration management, we are going to learn Ansible. And CI/CD, we are going to do it on Azure DevOps tool. So we'll understand what CI/CD, we'll understand the Azure DevOps and its features. What are agents? How do you integrate your extensions? What is a job, stage, pipeline? All these things we'll see. Okay. And coming to containers, we'll learn about Docker. How do you install and configure Docker? How do you create Docker containers? How do you make images? And how do you install them in some other resource? And of course, we are going to learn Kubernetes also. But Kubernetes is more going to be like a condensed version, a shorter version, because Kubernetes itself is a very vast topic. Okay. So we're going to learn, I would call it as Kubernetes 101, meaning very high level. We'll talk about the architecture, the deployment services. Yeah, we'll cover good amount of deal. We'll cover all the topics, but not as deep as we go into other topics. Okay. The reason I'm saying is Kubernetes itself is a vast topic, in fact. And monitoring and alerting, as I told you, Azure Monitor. How do you configure your alerts? How do you configure your monitoring? All these things we'll see in Azure Monitor. Okay. So that's the crux of our course, if you ask me. Okay. Operating systems, cloud, scripting, IAC, source code management, software configuration, CI/CD, containers, monitoring and alerting. Okay. So again, just take a look for 2 minutes. We'll cover a couple of more slides, then I'll take your questions. Maybe some of your questions will be covered in the next slides.
Kiran, hi Kiran, sorry to interrupt. So there's a small question. So what amount of coding is required for all these things? Because I am from a testing background, so I don't have knowledge on coding. So how much amount of coding is required for this? Can I means am I able to continue this coding thing?
Okay, we'll talk about that. All right, so let's go to the next few slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, so again, some of the questions like someone has asked now, what should you have to join this course? So I put, based on the frequently asked questions, I put this slide. So what should you have to join this course? You need a computer, of course, no doubt about it, and you would need system administrator rights. I mean, if you're doing it on your work laptop, mm, even if you don't have system admin rights, it's okay. We can find a way out, but it would be good if you have them. And 4 GB, minimum 4 GB of RAM and one i3 quad core. Don't worry, even if your system is a little older one, that's fine. A Pentium quad core or a dual core should also do, but just these are decent specs. Don't go and buy new laptops if you don't have one. I mean, if you have an older one also, it's fine. You don't have to upgrade that, because most of the stuff we are going to perform on the cloud anyway. All right. So subscriptions, what subscriptions do you need? You need Azure free tier subscription and a backup Azure subscription. Okay, so this course might last for more than 2 months. At about, I mean, I would be happy if it gets completed in 2 months, but it would eventually take, like, anywhere between 10 to 11 weeks. Okay, that's my observation. And notice that I am a human, so I might take some breaks because of exhaustion or some work related stuff, family related stuff. So one day or 2 days off here and there. So it would take anyways between 10 to 12 weeks. All right. So that's almost 3 months. But Azure free tier subscription is only for 1 month. And also, you need not create immediately. You need not create the free tier subscription immediately after our course begins, because the first week it's going to be entirely theoretical perspective, theoretical point of view. I did not include in the core in this curriculum, but we'll talk about very basics like what is DNS, what is virtualization, how do you, how do you create virtual networks or networking. All these concepts we'll talk in first week, and then in the middle of second week we'll start using virtual machines. So till that point you need not create a Azure subscription because it's 1 month limited. Unlike AWS will give you full 1 year free subscription, whereas Azure gives you only for 1 month, and you would need a credit card for this. That's an unfortunate part again. You will definitely need a credit card to be able to sign up for Azure free tier. You'll not be charged, but you need a credit card. So after 1 month, after the let's say you create your Azure subscription middle of the second week of our course, but it will expire after 1 month. Then you have to convert it into pay as you go. Then it will start. I mean, you'll not get bill more than, like, let's say 500 or 800 INR. That's fine, I guess. But even if you want to avoid that kind of billing also, you can create a backup Azure subscription. Again, the problem with backup Azure subscription is you may not be able to create from the same IP where you created your first account. Okay, so in this case you need to take help of your brothers, sisters, or whoever it is, and ask them to create a separate account for you, or your friends. And that is what I mean by a backup account. Okay, so it will be also free, but only thing is Azure has some kind of I don't know, some kind of machine learning which will prevent you from creating secondary account from the same IP address with the same email address. Okay, so it's again random. It worked for some people. They are able to create 2 free tier subscriptions from the same IP address with different email. Some people were not able to create. So don't take that risk. If you want to go for pay as you go, as I said, but you have to be little disciplined and shut down your resources once you're done practicing. But either way, a backup account will always help you. Okay, so that's where you need to get in touch with your friends who can help you in create. Maybe if you're in the US, take help from the friends in India. All that they need to do is log into the Azure portal, create a free tier account, and give the details to you. Okay, um, and apart from the Azure free tier subscription, you need to have access to some services like, I mean, these are all free services, okay? GitHub, Azure DevOps is completely free. You don't have to pay anything. Docker Hub, Docker Hub is free. Freenom, if you want to understand how to create your own domain name, you can create Freenom. It will give you a free domain name, domain name in the sense website name, okay? So you don't have to spend money on that one as well. So these are the services you will require to subscribe. Again, apart from Azure free tier where you need credit card, none of the other accounts require credit card or debit card. So that's fine. And what software do you need to install on your machine? You need Git Bash. Okay, Git Bash or Git rather. You need to install Git on your system for version control and also to learn to access your virtual machines through that one. And from the code perspective, you will need Visual Studio Code, which is like a notepad only, but advanced features to edit your code. Okay, so VS Code, and you will install Azure command line interface to check your resources on Azure. These are the three tools at the most you need to install. Maybe sometimes you could also decide to install Docker on your own Windows laptop, or you can install on virtual machines also. That's up to you. Okay, from a personal perspective, this is where a lot of the questions keep coming. What do you need to have? Do you need, okay, before the personal part, let me skip to the skills one. Look at this. I put a thumbs up and I said no prerequisites. Okay, so this course is designed in such a way that we are starting from ground zero, very basics, from very basics. Okay, when I say from very basics, I don't teach you what is a keyboard and a mouse. I expect you to know how to open applications. I expect you to know how to type. Okay, but apart from that, I don't want to, I don't need any kind of prerequisite knowledge like Linux or even coding or anything as such. If you have them already, very good. Okay, if you don't have them, we are going to learn. Only thing is you have to put additional efforts. Okay, you have to put additional efforts and learn them, master them as we go along. I'll give you the foundation. You have to build your house on top of it. Okay, from a personal perspective, okay, again combined with skills, you can read it together. What I need you to have is appetite for learning. Okay, that hunger for learning. And second thing is quality time for classes and practice, meaning you need to spend, I mean, when I say quality time and participation, what I mean is, you could generally, I mean, technology has made our lives so easier, right? So you could wake up, or if you're in the US, the classes happen generally between 7 to 8 a.m., 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. IST. So if you're in some parts in the US, what you could do is, after a long day, you could just plump on your couch and open your iPad and, watch my class half interestedly, half uninterestedly. So rather, that is not a good thing. If you could open it on your desktop, just like your work calls, and focus on it and ask me questions, okay, and share your thoughts, okay, that would be active participation and quality time. And also after the classes, I'm going to give you some tasks. So if you have to master something, you have to practice. Okay, only then you will remember it very well. Okay, and one of the questions I get asked is, do we get real-time projects? No, we don't get real-time projects. I'm not an organization. I'm just a trainer. But I can give you tasks. I can give you projects as close as the real world can be, because I've been working in the IT world from about 10, 12 years. Okay. So I can give you the projects as realistic as possible, but not the real projects. That will be sure. Okay. Because I'm not giving you internship. I don't have a startup to help you with these things. But from my experience, from what I'm doing what I've been doing, I can give you the realistic projects. So in the demo, everyone asks me, do you have real-time projects? Do you have real-time projects? But uh, when it comes to the actual participation, when it comes to doing the tasks, no one does any tasks. Every day, or not every day, but some days, I give you some tasks to do. For example, if you completed Linux shell scripting, I'll ask you to create a shell script to achieve a certain part. Okay, but most of the people don't ever try to do it. Or after our Terraform initial class is done, I'll give you a task asking you to explore some things apart from what we discussed. No one does that most of the times. I mean, I'm not I'm not being too cynical, but yeah, that's what happens. So yeah, we will go as real time as possible, but if you don't practice, there's no point. All right. So those are the requirements from your perspective. You have to spend quality time and participate actively in the classes, do the tasks, and you should have the hunger for learning. That means apart from what I teach you, you should spend some time studying some case studies, this and that. Okay, so no prerequisites for this course. If you don't have any coding experience, totally fine. Okay.
Kiran garu.
Yeah, please go on.
Hello.
Yeah,
Kiran,
please go on, Lakshmi
sorry
garu.
to interrupt
Yeah,
you.
yeah, go on.
Hello everyone. Me from Career IT, and the regular sessions for these sessions will be starting from Monday IST, which falls on Sunday for USA people. That is 16th August of IST time. So please do check your mail for other details also. And the things would be from 7 to 8 a.m. IST. And I will be sharing all details through mail and along with today's recorded session. Thank you. Okay, please carry on, Kiran Garu.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions?
Yeah, Kiran, my question you haven't answered to my question, Kiran. I had asked you before the starting
Yeah.
of the DevOps.
So you said you have 10 years of experience, right?
Yes, Kiran.
Yeah. So as I said, this course doesn't require any prerequisites. So if you already have IT experience, well and good. Okay. So the way you have to project it is, let's say you have 5 years working in an organization at a IT support or a QA
Yes.
engineer. So the way you need to project yourself is, yes, you joined as a QA, but eventually I kind of brought in the DevOps practices, or I helped uh, in the DevOps practices. I was still leading my QA team, or I was still part of the QA, but I started learning DevOps and I helped the DevOps team. So I eventually moved to DevOps team. So now I want to move to a full-time DevOps team. Something like that you can say in your interviews, or you can say that because in your relieving letter, of the record, you might not get something like what exact job function you are doing. They will give you like senior software engineer
Yes.
or something like that, right? So you could say that, provided you're confident enough after the course, you spend some time and get well equipped with all these tools and all the practices. You say that, yes, for the last 2 years I've been working in DevOps roles. Okay, I worked on cloud, I worked on Terraform, I have knowledge on so and so things. So that's why I'm looking for a DevOps role. Okay, you can say that. Okay, so you have to be prepared thoroughly. You have to have all this knowledge. You have to think about various use case scenarios. Not only knowing about the tools, but what problem it is going to solve is also another thing you have to know. Okay, so once your course is done, you're not immediately ready, I would honestly say. You'll have to spend some time studying some case studies, making notes, getting yourself more familiar with all these technologies, then spending 1.5 month completely on these things. Then you can start applying. And remember one thing, folks, DevOps is a wide area. So we're touching a large number of tools here, right? These tools itself are overwhelming, right? But there are even more tools for each of these sections. Instead of GitHub, some person might be using Azure DevOps itself. Azure DevOps can also act as a GitHub repository. Or instead of Azure DevOps, they might be using GitHub Actions. GitHub, through GitHub also you can do CI/CD. Or they might be using a completely different set of tools, like they might be using Bitbucket, they might be using GitLab and GitLab CI. So when you apply for your DevOps jobs, different companies have different requirements. But I picked up these tools because these are getting real traction in the market. If you are working on Azure, which I did not put here, by the way, it's most likely that the companies might be also using Azure DevOps, and Ansible is very popular. Terraform undoubtedly is the popular choice. In fact, Stack Overflow, do you all know Stack Exchange? Okay, Stack Exchange is a popular developer community where people ask various questions and get answers. So they have recently published a survey which said that, in terms of the compensation, people who know the tools like Terraform or cloud are one of the highest paying engineers. Okay, so that's why I'm using Terraform even before the survey came, but I'm telling you that this is one of the popular tools. But there might be some organizations which might be using a different set of DevOps tools. So there you might be rejected, but don't feel disheartened. Okay, there are wide variety of tools, wide variety of ways of using it. Some companies might be using only, as a DevOps engineer, you might be only performing this part, CI/CD only. Okay, so some companies might be doing end to end. Everything is done by DevOps teams. Some companies might be doing only everything except the monitoring and alerting. Okay, you might build infrastructure, but you might never log into it, so you need not even know operating system there. So there are various combinations of these tools and various maturity levels which each organizations apply. But what I'm trying to say is, if you achieve, let's say, 8 out of 10 on at least two of these tools like Git or Terraform, Ansible, or Azure DevOps, that would be like real awesome. And in other tools you might be like 6 or even 5. No one can master everything, right? Initially, as you grow in your experience, as you grow in your career, you might expand your knowledge to next level of next level. And also you might learn additional clouds. You might become familiar with AWS in no time once you learn Azure also. Okay, so it's up to you how you practice during the course and after the course. And you have to project yourself in such a way that you have already worked on DevOps experience, and for that you need proper practice. Again, that's my point is, okay, so you are definitely in a right position. Sorry, what's your name? Someone who asked this question at the beginning. Dinesh, is it?
Sir?
Who was the one who asked the question initially about 10 years of experience?
No, sir, I'm not. Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah, please go on.
Sir, are you, it's regarding Azure. Are you going to explain some of the topics I have? SQL Server, Database, Key Vault, Logic App, and Function App.
So no, we're not talking logic apps. We are not talking about function apps. We are focusing mostly on the IaaS part, infrastructure as a services, which means virtual machines, virtual networks. Yes, we are going to talk about Key Vault for sure, but we are not going to talk
SQL
about.
Server, Database, sir.
No, that's a managed service, Dinesh. Meaning you don't have to do anything with that. You just we are not DBS. We are DevOps engineers, right? So we will not learn Azure SQL. We'll understand what's a SQL database, but we are not going to learn about Azure SQL. Azure SQL Server is a managed database. You don't have to configure anything. Yeah, maybe in one of the tasks I'll show you how to install SQL as a general practice, but we are not going to go deep into database side.
Okay, sir.
And logic apps and function apps are also kind of your what you call as a PaaS services. There are 3 kinds of cloud services, folks. I mean, this is for our later class, but just giving you some idea. One is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Then another one is PaaS, platform as a service. The third one is software as a service. Infrastructure as a service is where you build your VM. I mean, cloud will give you the virtual machines with operating systems. So you'll get them pre-configured. The VM and the operating system is pre-configured. But what you do on top of the OS, like installing dependencies, okay, updating your OS from time to time to make sure it is secure. All these things will be done by us, DevOps engineer. In case of PaaS, it is VM plus OS plus even runtime. Here there is nothing much to do. Just put in your code inside it. Okay. So only you will have to manage the code. So these are more like developer services. Developers should focus on these things. Okay, not DevOps engineers. So that's where like Dinesh asked, Logic App and Function App comes into picture. But I'll definitely tell you what Logic App does, what Function App does. We have one session where I'll talk about all the key services in Azure, like Logic App, Function App, and Key Vault, all these things. So we'll definitely touch, but we'll not dig deep into these things because majority of the configuration lies in this area. And SaaS is here, everything is given pre-configured for us. We just need to log into that service and use it. For example, Gmail. For using Gmail, do you have to install it? Do you have to write any code?
No.
Do you have to maintain any servers? No, right? So that's a SaaS where you get everything on a platter. You just need to install. You just need to log in and start using it. Okay. Or Google Drive, OneDrive, all these are examples. In fact, if you talk about Microsoft Office 365, that is also a SaaS application. Only thing you need to maintain is the content, what you are uploading inside it, and access management, who gets who needs access to which part. Only these things you need in SaaS part. So there is nothing to do here. Okay. In PaaS, again, everything you will be given by cloud provider. You have to just upload your code and content and configuration. Okay. So mostly these are done by developers.
Okay. Sir, you have told that in subscription we have to go through the free tier subscription, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sir, we cannot use the debit card, right?
We cannot use debit card, unfortunately. That's a bad thing with Azure.
Okay, while we are subscribing, you are going to explain how to subscribe, or we have to subscribe ourselves?
Yeah, I'll show you. Okay, I'll give you the run through. It's very easy, Dinesh. But I'll show you in the first week we talk about the theoretical part. I'll show you how to how to actually create your Microsoft account and log into Azure portal and all these things. I'll show you. Don't worry. Yeah, another thing again, based on what Dinesh asked, one thing you would need to understand from this from the time you join the course is you have to feel like you're a DevOps engineer. So you have to see a lot of the IT operations or even DevOps is about figuring out things by yourselves, right? By Google search, all these things. So you have to have that open mind, and whenever an issue comes up, you have to have that attitude that I'll fix this today anyway. So you have various fora. You can search on Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever your search engine is. You can go to Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow. You can go to Reddit. Reddit has a lot of communities. Okay, for each of these topics. You have Azure DevOps as one community. You can go there and ask your questions, or you can speak to your friends. But you need to have that attitude that I'll fix this anyways. I mean, not immediately, but after a few days once we start learning things.
Okay, sir.
Kiran, I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, after completion of this course, can a resource means like me able to perform a Azure, a cloud developer or cloud architect rather than
No,
a cloud configuration?
you're going to be a DevOps engineer, Raghu. So it's not a developer. You're not going to be an admin. So DevOps is a separate role. Okay. DevOps is a separate role that will ensure whatever your developers are building, in the sense whatever the developers are writing the code, that is taken and deployed onto your servers in a shorter time with efficiency, minimizing errors and all these things. So that's what a DevOps job is. So, and not only that, you have to be you have to automate all these things like infrastructure creation, software configuration management, and all these things. Okay, so you are going to be a DevOps engineer with good knowledge and good experience on Azure. You're not going to be an Azure developer. For that, you need to be a developer in one of these languages, right? Like you should have been a developer in, let's say, .NET or C# or Java, Python. So that's what a developer is, who writes code. But a Azure developer is someone who writes his code, something which is very much deployable on cloud. Okay, but we are not developers. We are DevOps engineers. We work with development teams. We work with ops teams. We make sure the software release lifecycle is shortened. The time from the time that the time duration between the planning and release is made short. That's the aim of the DevOps. As a DevOps engineer, we'll use all the tools that I've discussed to achieve that goal. All right. So this is for a DevOps role, not as a cloud engineer or not as a cloud Azure developer as well.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So there is SRE role, which I mentioned in the initial stages. SRE is more about working in production environment. Okay, meaning a DevOps job is to make sure whatever the developers is developing is quickly compiled and put into your target servers. For that, you have to prepare your target servers yourself and all this. But once you hand it over to the Earlier it used to be IT operations team. Now IT operations team with a software development mindset is known as SRE, meaning they focus largely on observability, meaning monitoring and alerting and log analysis, and improving your application's resilience, availability, uptime, all these things they will focus on once the application is already in production. Whereas DevOps team's work is to make sure you enhance developer velocity, meaning you create skills, you create tools, and you use tools in such a way that your developers can test things faster and deploy faster. Okay, I mean, developers will not deploy, but you will make sure whatever developers are building is deployed faster. Okay, that's the DevOps job. Whereas SRE is to ensure the production applications are always resilient. Resilient in the sense recover faster from failure, and all these things. Of course, DevOps and SRE teams work together, but sometimes DevOps team might be also doing the role of SRE, or your team might be called SRE, but you might be doing both DevOps and SRE. So you're responsible not only for building your infrastructure, deploying your code, software configuration, but also the production maintenance. There are, again, as I said, it's a wild, wild west. Different teams have different kinds of approaches, different kinds of maturity levels. Some teams might have single click deployments, meaning developers just push the code and everything is done automatically. Only thing your project manager or your team leads do is approve these deployments. Done. Deployment is done. Okay. So yeah, or some organizations where they might still be doing only certain things automatically, and most of the things might be semi-manual or manual. In that case, when they ask you, they'll ask you for all these skills. They might not be using it today, but they want to hire someone who already has this experience, who already has worked on these things. Okay, because they're hiring you only because you will bring the fresh energy and fresh knowledge. So you should be prepared for all these scenarios. Okay, again, uh, don't worry too much. I mean, I'm talking about the future, but again, currently what you need to focus is whatever we are learning in this course, you make sure you grasp that quickly, you make notes, you refer to that, and and another thing is, again, futuristic talk. But if you decide to join this course and if you decide to go on the DevOps role, you have to make sure you build up your networking with your friends, or on LinkedIn or Reddit, communities like Reddit, and understand what is happening in various organizations. Okay, some people might give you a lot of details, some people might not give so much details. So that's where your friends comes in to help, right? Or you can use YouTube has a lot of material, lot of case studies being presented, a lot of tools being presented. Not immediately, again, don't overwhelm with yourself with watching all these videos right now, but once we are thoroughly covering a lot of topics, you can go to YouTube and search for these topics and how are these people are deploying them in their organizations, and you'll get better picture, and you can use them in your interviews to sell yourself better. So I would say this much. Okay, once you join this course, focus on what's happening initially. Okay, I mean, focus on what I've been teaching, and some questions I get is, I mean, kind of I get irritated because people ask, oh, are this really useful in our real world? The reason I'm telling you is because there will be some applicability for some of the tools, some of the technologies or theoretical part I'm telling you. So if you, in the first few days or first 2 weeks only, you think, is this really necessary? Why are you teaching? I mean, it's not because you're questioning me, but I don't like that attitude. Whatever I'm teaching, it's about for all of our good benefit. Okay. So don't think about where you will apply these tools immediately. Try to grasp these topics, try to read about them, try to understand them. Okay, then you will gradually come to know. Okay, most of the DevOps job or even IT ops jobs is like waiting in slip. If you know cricket, what happens when you are a slip, you're a fielder in the slip? What do you do most of the time? No one watches cricket here?
We'll wait for the ball to come.
Back up.
Yeah, so you most of the time you wait and focus, right? So
Yeah.
in DevOps, you will not sit idle and wait, but all the tools you learned, you never know when they come in handy. Okay, some random issue comes up, and some tool you have learned some 2 years ago or some command you learned 2 years ago might come handy. So that's what I'm comparing with the slip field, right? So you might be doing your regular job, but one issue comes up, no one knows, but you might have read it somewhere else, so you can immediately apply that. Okay, so initially focus on all the tools we are discussing, all the theoretical concepts we are discussing, and try to learn about them, make notes, ask me questions if you don't understand, and then you can build upon your skills. Again, to answer all your questions, your experience doesn't matter, your previous experience doesn't matter, your lack of coding skills doesn't matter. If you have them, very well. If you don't have them, put extra efforts, learn them, and definitely DevOps is the very greener area these days. Okay, a lot of openings, a lot of people switching jobs, a lot of people trying to get into the DevOps area. Not easy, I would say, not easy. You have to focus on this one. And I'll tell you my scenario also. Even today, I'll have to be on my toes. I have to learn new things. I have to, apply these things. For example, I've only learned DevOps Terraform for the last 4 or 5 years. I've been using that only in my previous organizations. But for one of the clients, he wanted me to use ARM templates. ARM templates are Azure Resource Manager, which are like inbuilt Azure tool. I never use them, but I had to learn them and apply them. Yeah, because I already know Terraform, it became much easier for me to understand how these concepts are applied. So tomorrow also, when they interview for some job role, they might ask you about a certain tool. Let's say they ask you about GitLab CI, but you say, no, I never used GitLab CI, but I know how we can do the same thing in Azure DevOps. Okay, they'll be happy. If the interviewer is sensible, he'll not wait for the tool, but if you know the concepts, if you know the process, they will be happy to hire you. You need not know the exact tools that your new employee is using. If you know the parallel tool or something similar to that tool, if you know the concepts well, he'll be happy to hire you. If I am interviewing, I interview a lot of people, and I don't look for specific tools. Whatever tools they know, I'll ask those questions about them. For example, people put some copy resumes from some other people and say, I have worked on so and so. So when I ask some basic questions also, they are also not able to answer. That's not a good thing. If you're writing your resume, you have to know each and everything in that resume. Okay, so some places you might put knowledge of so and so tool, no experience. That's fine, but you need to explain what you know about that tool. Okay, so yeah, we're going to talk about all these things in our course. And again, when we are discussing individual topics, I will also bring up what questions might be asked in the interviews. Based on that, you can make a note, and I'm not maintaining any notes, because randomly I'll give you these things, and you can you can make a note in your own notebook and refer to them later. Okay, another thing is, people ask me if I help with resumes and all. No, I don't have resumes, or I can help you with that part. But what I can do is, if you want, you can email me your resume and I can review it. Okay, and again, I'll have some assessment in the middle of our course randomly. So these are like interview questions only, but multiple choice questions. So that will also, like, they also help you, like, knowledge check what you have learned and what you have not learned. I have some documentation for most of the tools. I'll share that with you. Okay, once our course begins, there are a lot of PDF documents I'll share, some resources I'll give you to read. Okay, so yes, notes also will be provided, but for not every topic. Some topics I have only the basics, some topics I have elaborated, some topics, I just put the important commands and important things you need to remember. So it's a combination of these things. You'll get notes for sure. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, hi Kiran, Balaji here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you need to do any certifications along with this course?
Okay, so as I said, this is a DevOps course and not particularly cloud course, right? So we're talking about a lot of topics, and we are also talking Azure. Immediately after this course, you can definitely spend 10 days and target Azure 900. Okay, AZ900. It's Azure Fundamentals. That will give you definitely good boost to your resume. But you know, if you still want to, you know, if you still want to do some certifications, wait for a couple of more months after our course, practice more deeply and study this documentation, because the next level course is called as AZ104, Azure Administrator Associate. it's it's really tough. It's an associate courses are generally supposed to be easier, but this one is really tough. You need to focus on a lot of areas within Azure. But as I said, we are learning to become a DevOps engineer, not a Azure administrator. So you need to have some additional time invested to complete that course, study the documentation, practice, do some practice papers, and you should be able to do it after like 2 to 3 months. Um, but I would say don't focus on certifications immediately, but rather focus on switching your job roles internally within your organization or outside also, uh, keeping what do you say, with by getting good grip of all these things. Okay, then you can eventually start working on these tools and get more certifications. So certifications are good to have, but not mandatory, if you ask me. Okay, and if you're putting 2 to 3 years of experience as DevOps, even if you don't have certifications, I won't judge you. But yeah, AZ900 is something you can do it. Okay, someone has asked me, if 1 month is expired, how can we use Azure account to use practice? So as I told you, there are two ways, right? You can either switch to pay as you go account, meaning at the end of the month, you will get a bill of 1,000 rupees, at the max 1,000 rupees, provided you are using it in a disciplined way. If you create some resources and leave it without deleting them, you will get a lot of bill. But if you're using it reasonably, you will get 1,000 to 1,200 of bill at the most, and you can pay it. Or another way is, ask your friends or family who is staying in a different location to create a free tier account for you. And within that account, they can create a separate account for you and share those credentials. I'll talk about all these things in the second week, so don't worry about that. Um, and someone has asked again, Jay Chandra asked, I have so many years of experience. Yes, as I said, if you have already IT experience or non-IT experience also, that is good. But how do you put it across is up to you. But if you're working in a HR field and you want to apply for a DevOps job, I would not say it's easy. But if you're working in something like a project management role or a IT support, production support, or level one support, you could definitely say that, yes, I was hired as a level one engineer, but from the past 2 to 3 years, don't put more than that. From the past 2 to 3 years, I've been working in DevOps. I've been working on these tools. Okay. And I have worked on so and so project. So this is my contribution. This is my knowledge. Based on that, they will ask you questions, and you can answer them accordingly. Okay. But if you're completely from non-IT, it would be a little challenge, and I would leave it up to you to figure out how you can do it in your interviews, because based on what is there on your relieving letter and all these things also will play a part. Yeah, you might convince them that you are working in DevOps from the past 2 years, but in your relieving letter it says you're a HR executive. So how do you convince that situation, right? So that's up to you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Kiran. This is Vasu here. Just I want to confirm you from your side. I have 2 years break from the work through maternity
Hmm.
leave and all those. I want to rejoin back to IT. So can I join
Hmm.
this course and get into that resume work from?
Okay, so there are couple of challenge. I mean, yeah, getting back to work should not be a problem, because nowadays people understand that everyone takes break, and you have your own reasons to take a break. That's fine. Uh, but when it comes to technology, or what challenge I'm seeing is, um, you say that you stopped working, let's say by 2019. So you have to admit that you are not really up to date in some of the technologies. But you can say that even in during my break, I have focused on studying these things, and I've kept a close eye on all the technologies, and I'm learning all these tools like Docker, CI/CD. So I know all these tools. Okay, and definitely, if you are able to convince them you have good enough knowledge, good enough of hands-on, they will definitely take you, Vasavi. There should not be a problem. Okay, and because a lot of the organizations are also um, focusing on bringing diversity to their workplace. So there, some organizations are also running these exclusive recruitment drives to hire women who took some break because of maternity or whatever reasons. So you definitely stand a good chance in that, and provided you practice very well and you confidently answer the interview. Hey, your voice is breaking. Sorry, Vasvi, we can't hear you. Is it me or everyone else facing the same issue? Yeah, can you speak now? No, can't hear you. All right, any other questions? No, Vasvi, still breaking. Maybe you can type the question. All right, if you do not have any questions, we can end here. Hoping to see you all on Monday. You have a happy weekend. Stay home, stay safe.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a great weekend ahead.